This is not dependent on any party or anything like this. This goes way above all that. This was always planned as being total information control, as was the whole internet. Most people forget that the precursor to the internet we recognize is ARPA or DARPANET, which was wholly fleshed out by the military before anyone ever heard of AOL. But we've come to show that every space agency in this world is here for one reason: to ensure you know nothing about what is above your head, and that includes the sun and moon. And we're about to drop a huge bombshell with regard to the sun.
Hey friends, thank you so very much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you back. Look, I'm 10 for 12. The last 10 videos have been demonetized and labeled not suitable for most advertisers by our good friends over at YouTube. Even my last interview there with Bix Weir, it had advertising for about an hour, and then the snakes and lizards and algorithms decided to demonetize it. So a special thanks to my patrons. You're helping to keep us in this fight for truth as the fascists at YouTube changed the rules in the middle of the game. And I also very much want to thank sponsors like PatriotRates.com. Guys, I know how supportive you are of authors that I have on. You're supportive of me in so many ways. And what I want to tell you about PatriotRates.com is that you may be able to substantially save big money on your auto insurance, your health insurance, and or your life insurance. And you can get a free quote today from PatriotRates.com. It won't cost you a dime, and it may well save you a lot of money. Patriot Rates is an American insurance company you can trust, and it's owned by veterans. They'll always have your back by trying to find you the very best quote to fit your needs. So rest assured you have nothing to lose except paying too much. Visit PatriotRates.com for a free quote on auto, health, and life insurance, and stop paying for overpriced insurance. Visit PatriotRates.com today for your free quote. I'll put the link below this video. They're going to destroy this video too. Trust me, it won't be suitable for most advertisers. I have on the line right now Crow777. You'll know him from Crow777radio.com and his YouTube channel that I think has been deleted multiple times. We'll talk to him about that. We also have on Jason Lindgren, his co-host. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Crow, first you, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And Jason, you're a new acquaintance of mine. Thanks for coming on. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. My pleasure.
I'm sorry I'm not very familiar with the radio stuff you guys are doing now, but Crow, I was familiar with your channel, your lunar wave work, which I thought was very mysterious and interesting. I didn't know what to make of it, but maybe now I have a little bit more insight, and I'm certainly more open-minded about the topic. And so our friend David Weiss got us in touch with each other, and I'm just really glad to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. And it sounds like you're starting to feel the heat that I've been feeling since censorship came out in the open in the fall of 2017. It was at that point that Crow 777 on YouTube, the channel was deleted. Episode 76, Jason and I went on the air to tell everyone why the Mandalay Bay shooting was fake. And that was the last video we put up. We were deleted. I had no intention after, because you put thousands of hours. I mean, how many thousands of hours of work go into a YouTube channel, and they just delete it. They don't care. So I was done. So many people complained, we think, we'll never be sure, that it was reinstated at some point. And from that point forward, we have had nothing but censorship and information control. We were hit again on the 12th of December, 2018. Now all subscription, ad revenue, any of it is down by less than a third on YouTube. As a matter of fact, I'm preparing to wholly push everything over to Crow777radio.com and tell YouTube they can put it where the sun don't shine.
That's probably the move to make. And maybe, I'll tell you what, I thank my patrons here at the opening of the show. And it's just such a sincere thank you, because without them, YouTube is devastating. Here's what YouTube's trying to do. They're trying to starve us out by demonetizing everything. They don't want anyone to earn a living telling the truth, and they've changed their algorithms to filter out truth. So if you guys are trying to wake up today and you're going to YouTube like I did, and you're going to Google like I did, and you were searching for, say, NASA faked the moon landings, you will not get the information you're looking for. They're dishing up the opposite of that information. They're dishing up Mythbusters, NASA really did go to the moon type of information. So they're changing their algorithms to literally filter out truth. And in the case of YouTube, changing the algos to destroy what made YouTube great. So if they're not going to give you the recommended content, if they're not going to give you the content you're searching for, you're apt to not stay on YouTube as long. And you know how addicting watching YouTube videos can be. So they're literally destroying the platform, guys.
There's no doubt about it. And it's worse than that, actually, because if you logically break down, like you brought up the moon landing, I don't know how, Jason and I at one point made a 12-hour run at the fake nature of everything every space agency has ever told us. Everything. It's all a lie. And so when you begin to realize that this is in fact provable, and then you go on YouTube, and in my case, they embed Encyclopedia Britannica Apollo entries, what they're basically doing is trying to stifle new discoveries and keep us all stuck in the past when Encyclopedia Britannica may or may not have had any value. Clearly it doesn't, because they're lying to everyone, telling everyone that men walked on the moon. But my point here is what you're looking at is the barn wall in Animal Farm, the book Animal Farm. They're changing the rules. They're rewriting what's acceptable on the barn wall. And what happens is the poor animals in the farm can't quite remember what happened 3 years ago. So then they begin to accept whatever is newly written on the wall as what's always been. And for my part, everyone listening to this, if they come to you on YouTube, you need to stand the hell up. You need to demand better. And for my part, I'm not planning on being on YouTube another year, because I see where this all goes.
I couldn't agree more. And I was watching a video on Conspiracy Box on YouTube. I think that's Sam Tripoli's channel. And they had on Ben Swan, who said that what's happening on YouTube right now is all a result of Donald Trump getting into the White House and all of the grassroots journalism and videos that were being produced, not only in support of his message, but in anti-support, I should say, of Hillary Clinton, like getting the word out on her criminality. And this algorithm change at YouTube was urged not just by BuzzFeed, which is the official story. BuzzFeed pressured YouTube to get rid of these conspiracy type videos. It was, according to Ben Swan, pressure put on YouTube by Media Matters, George Soros, and the Atlantic Council to change the algorithms to filter out this stuff. So this is worse than we saw in 1984, because in 1984, Winston was just changing history a little bit, fudging dates. What YouTube's doing now is deleting history altogether. All of the research you've done, all the research I've done, all the research others have done will now not be findable on YouTube because of this algos change. So they're literally erasing history.
Yeah, but let me interject an idea here. Jason and I have done endless work to show that even the construction of YouTube by, I've forgotten whether they were PayPal employees or eBay, they came from one of the big insider places. Those are the guys who are claimed to have invented it. In 2006, if I've got that date right, it was bought out for $1.6 billion or something like this. At that point, there was no revenue, there was no profit, and they were telling the entire world, we will pay for all the video you want to upload, the bandwidth, the storage, all of it, the infrastructure. Right. To this day, if I want to take 3 YouTube videos and serve them to my private website, it'll cost me $30, $40 as a private video serve for the most part. So you can see the insider long game that's gone on here. My point here is this is not dependent on any party or anything like this. This goes way above all that. This was always planned as being total information control, as was the whole internet. Most people forget that the precursor to the internet we recognize is ARPA or DARPANET, which was wholly fleshed out by the military before anyone ever heard of AOL. This is the long game that's being played. And just for the record, I would point out, very few people are aware that Trump and Hillary come from the same royal bloodline, among other things. Doesn't matter who we get anymore. If anyone can stand up and show me a difference that we've gotten better in the last Lord knows how many supposed presidents here to help us out, I would beg to differ. We're almost now, we can almost state that we're in a permanent depression from my point of view.
Jason, feel free to jump in, but something you just said resonates with me, and I'll tell you what that is, Crow. The Senate, which is controlled by who? The conservatives, would not support the Born Alive bill. It didn't pass the Senate. So I guess if these people, and I made this point with Bix Weir in my most recent interview, if these people won't stand up for babies who survive abortions and are born alive, they're certainly not going to stand up for our free speech on YouTube. And
That's a true thing. But Jason, we should hit them with the Montague Norman information so people can go look that up and have a truer view of what's gone on here. You wanna take it, or you want me to?
Go ahead and start it.
So in 1924, and I'm ballparking from memory here, the governor of the Central Bank of England, whose name was Montague Norman or Norman Montague, I don't know which way around that goes, comes to this country to speak to all the bankers in 1924. And in the course of that speech, he says, guess what, guys? We have our political system, red and blue, Democrat, Republican in place here. And it's been carefully designed. And what it's designed to do is what's going to allow us banks to run rampant now. What it's designed to do is to keep two sides endlessly arguing about things of no importance. Anyone can look up that speech. That's 1924, governor of the Central Bank of England, which is the model that our central bank was made from. And he's speaking to all the bankers of the United States. Anyone could go look up that speech, and it starts to give insight into the wholesale control. And that really, most people think that maybe the governments are the be all and end all. They are not. They're playing to a beat that's being laid down far above their heads. And, I would challenge anyone to show me in my lifetime. I was born in the 60s when we last had a president that did something meaningful for the lives of human beings. It's all gone in the same direction. It kind of culminated in the 80s, right? We had that big party in the 80s, and everyone just quit looking at everything and enjoyed life all the way through the 80s till it came to a screeching halt right around the time Chernobyl was staged. But I would point out Jimmy Carter, 1973, first president to stack the government with trilateral commission members. Bad enough that they're trilateral, but every person on these Club of Rome, Trilateral Commission, all these places, they sit on overarching clubs that are like secret society clubs. For that matter, Richard M. Nixon comes in, and maybe it was 73 again, right around there, privatizes all the medicine in this country. Before Richard Nixon, hospitals existed to serve patients. After that, starting with Kaiser Permanente, it was all for profit. Look where we are now. Look where we are now. So I would point out it doesn't make any difference anymore who comes into red or blue or green or purple or any other damn construct they want to make. They're all the dancing monkeys for a beat that's being played at a higher level.
I copy that 100%, and I would just add to it by saying that on the Warren Commission was John J. McCloy, who not only was the former chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, he was the chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank and the president of the World Bank. So
there you go.
Your point's well taken.
Yeah, there you go. Follow the money. I mean, what would you add, Jason?
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations is the thing you really got to look at if you want your global government. But let's start with the obvious one that they really pull on everybody, and everyone gets behind a candidate like they vote in the president. I mean, this is the most obvious ninth grade civics class nonsense.
There
and
you
people,
go.
Yeah, people think they're voting for the president. You don't vote for the president. The Electoral College does.
That's
the
right.
popular vote doesn't mean diddly poo.
As a matter of fact, it's provably diddly poo, and I'll prove it right here and now. Who are the geniuses that run that television show Pawn Stars? Their forefather was a president. Can you help me? Harrison, there you go. Harrison's descendants are the geniuses that run Pawn Stars. Out of all the millions of people in this country, those guys got the TV show. But Harrison was sat against the popular vote. What does that mean? It means all the people dutifully marched out and cast their vote and wanted the other guy, and yet the Electoral College sat Harrison anyhow. This supposedly happened with Trump, but I quit paying attention to that nonsense a long time ago. The point is that each of us was told in high school civics what seats a president, and that is the Electoral College, and that has always been a stacked deck. And I will further state that at no point do the people of this country pick a candidate, put him in the running, or seat him at the end of the day. That's how corrupt our system is. And yet, next time around, everyone will march out to cast their vote, which means absolutely nothing. And once again, the Electoral College will seat whoever the hell they feel like seating. And if the marketing with Fox and CNN wasn't effective enough, they'll seat that president against the popular vote.
All right. Well, let's do this because I know we don't have all day because I screwed up and double booked myself today, and I apologize to you guys for that. So instead of me, my inclination is to bring up the crimes of Hillary Clinton, and let's talk about how down the river we'd be if that witch was sitting in the White House. But we don't have time, and everybody knows my views on that. Let's talk about the lunar wave and the story of what happened. Can I show it in this video? Does it exist anywhere, or has it fully been scrubbed, the video you shot of the moon
No,
capturing this lunar wave?
it's all on Crow 777 on YouTube. You can find it. The one you're going to want to see is called the 2012 lunar wave. It's one of the earliest clips up, but as fate would have it, Jason and I are about to do episode 150 on crow777radio.com, and we're about to drop another bombshell that's equally the size of the lunar wave. And for people who haven't seen it, we could describe it like this. If you took like an old 1970s tube television and then filmed the screen with like a VHS camcorder, and you get that rolling ripple wave, that's basically what was filmed in the accidental capture of the 2012 lunar wave, which is the first known capture. It's been captured some 30 times. It's been captured twice in front of Jupiter. But we've come to show that every space agency in this world is here for one reason: to ensure you know nothing about what is above your head, and that includes the sun and moon. And we're about to drop a huge bombshell with regard to the sun. But anyhow, to get back to the point.
Well, let me interject. When are you dropping the bombshell about the sun? When is this happening? Because we're recording this today on Thursday, the 28th.
So it'll be a week from today. It will go live on crow777radio.com, and the first hour will go live on Crow777 on YouTube a week from today, which is Thursday.
Okay. All right. Well, let's back up then, because I do want to say something. People who know my background know that I was a professional executive producer, creative director for Target Corporation, worked with Tiger Woods, did a bunch of spots, very familiar with HD cameras and lenses. What I saw in your video of the lunar wave is not an in-camera effect. Can we be clear about that? This is something else.
It's provable. It's provable. Anyone who goes to the first capture, which was accidental, I was trying to film objects transiting the moon. You'll notice that the camera pans below the moon, which was very unusual because I always stay centered. The wave started, but at the time I was looking at a 3-inch LCD on the back of the camera. I didn't see it. I panned back up to the moon, and then the wave catches up to the camera, which has always been proof positive it's a filmed event.
Do you guys have an opinion on what it is? And I guess I'll give you that leading question because I am now more open-minded to questioning the heliocentric model because of what Wernher von Braun put on his tombstone.
There you go.
Psalms 19:1. The heavens declareth the glory of God. The firmament showeth his handiwork.
So there's Wernher von Braun. Apparently when he died, everything we needed to go to the moon died with him. So what they could do in a couple of years in the 60s without computers, they can't replicate now. My dying you know what. But anyhow, no one's ever left our atmosphere. I think we can start to demonstrate that. And in many of the older kind of natural science, almost you might call them alchemy at this point, or the older Eastern traditions, you will hear constant references to point out how our world is illusory in one way, shape, or form. One of the oldest, often reproduced ideas is the moon reflected in a lake, okay? And that's basically what you're looking at. And what we're about to come out with about the sun here is going to similarly demonstrate that when you look at the moon, you're not looking at a rock in space. From my point of view at this point, after all these years, you can't get there. And if you could, you couldn't put a boot on it. It's not a rock in space. And I made the mistake early on of calling it a hologram. I wish I hadn't done that. I made another mistake trying to correct for that mistake and called it a facade. And again, I wish I hadn't done that, but we don't have the language to describe what we're seeing here. But the firmament, the idea, the old religious idea of the firmament is a good description. I call it a hard, fast barrier. And what you're looking at is very aptly described by the older traditions that constantly, you know what? DreamWorks, the movie company DreamWorks shows you an example. You see the moon and you think, oh, that's the moon. And then all of a sudden this fishing bobber lands in the lake and you realize, oh, it's the reflection of the moon. Yep. And then you follow the little guys up to the real moon sitting there fishing for souls. And it's called DreamWorks, hint, hint, hint. That should give people something to go on.
Well, let me ask you guys this too. This just popped into my head, you know, as I mull over these different theories about what this thing is, this universe in which we live. it now that I've been more open-minded and I've started to question some of these things, it helps me understand the lunacy of the men that were firing hydrogen bombs into the atmosphere in an attempt to blow up the atmosphere. They literally were afraid at one point that they might ignite the atmosphere on fire, but they did it anyway. What were they trying to accomplish by launching those weapons into the atmosphere? And this idea of a firmament certainly helps frame that up in some somewhat more understandable way for me.
Jason, I think we need to go down the Madame Curie road here. What do you think?
Yeah, let's let them have it.
All right. Here's the thing. Nukes don't exist as they've been described to you, and most people hearing that for the first time are going to probably turn off what they're listening to and go chew on a peyote tree, or accuse me of doing that. But first, I'll assure you, I don't take peyote. The root of all nuclear nonsense resides with Madame Curie. I'm sure most people understand why, because she is the founder of these supposed radioactive materials. The problem is it's now been proven that Madame Curie never existed as a living human being. She's a construct. She's actually encoding the idea of mercury, which comes from the old secret societies. And this goes on and on through so many of the important scientists that they hold up. But I'm here to tell you, if they launched explosives up there, and that's a true thing, I can tell you certainly they were conventional explosives. Nuclear weapons do not exist as they've been described to you. And Fukushima, the Chernobyl nonsense, these are all staged events, no different than the fake shootings or 9/11 or any of the other things we see. These are massive staged events that help to steer the world in the direction the powers that be want to go next. It's not what you've been told it is. It's all there is to it.
Yeah, and it's not even a rabbit hole I wanted to go down in this call because it's just too much, right? I mean, those of us who have been waking up over time wake up to the crimes of the international bankers, and we wake up to the foundation of the Federal Reserve, and then we understand that it's privately owned, and then we understand that they funded all the intelligence agencies, and then we understand that they use pedophilia and child sex trafficking as a means of control, and then we understand that perhaps we've even been lied to about the very thing that we live on. It's just a little bit too much to take. So let's go back to where we began, though, as it pertains to the moon.
Okay.
The telescope work that's been done. I recently made mention of a channel I like. I think this guy, Tyler, does a very nice job over at Secure Team 10. He does a great job with UFO videos. And the point I wanted to make, though, was that UFOs are a conspiracy. Right? It's either a conspiracy covered up by the United States because they know aliens are real and, they've captured aliens and it's, visitors from a different galaxy, or it's deep state, hidden, breakaway civilization technology. Either way, it's a conspiracy. And that channel, Secure Team 10, always gets advertising, the best premium grade A advertising. Whereas all of my stuff, which is rooted in trying to actually discover the truth, is immediately demonetized. So
immediately you see the value in what you're doing, I would point out.
Well, thank you. But I would say this as it pertains to the things that have been shot, others with telescopes who have shot anomalies on the moon. We've seen craft moving across the moon, emerging from craters, traveling across what appears to be UFOs traveling across the moon. Can we talk about that? What is the construct? What are these objects and these unexplained phenomenon we're seeing?
All right, first of all, the moon's a hell of a lot closer to us. It's part of this system. Both the sun and the moon are. We've been lied to our entire lives, being told that the moon's 340,000 miles away and that the sun is 93 million miles away. And when an eclipse happens, this miracle of fate happens where it's exactly 400 times smaller the moon is than the sun, and it lines up perfectly. It's all a lie. All of it is a lie. But to get back to your question here, I don't think you'll ever meet an individual that's filmed more things in association with the moon than I have. And it's not just the moon. I did it for chemtrails. I did it during the daytime. I spent between 4 and 5 years of my life filming nonstop through some pretty high-end telescopes, pretty high-end cameras. And this is what I can tell you. The moon is a lot closer, and anything you've ever seen of a craft flying out of a crater is likely faked. Everything I have seen is faked, and I have had optics experts come in to look at my footage. Here's an example. Huffington Post took one of my clips where I said, look, here's this strange thing transiting the moon. And they came on with their FBI expert and their head of MUFON. I'm not sure why the hell an FBI expert knows anything about anything. But they said clearly Crow doesn't understand his equipment. He has filmed a satellite in half geosynchronous orbit. That would be 11,000 miles by NASA standards. And I said, I beg to differ. So I went and I found an optics expert, and we calculated my exact system, my exact camera. We calculated the difference between a still frame and video, because there is a difference. And we determined that if the thing I had shot had been 11,000 miles away, it would be 3 times the size of the so-called ISS, which also does not exist. My point here is just because you can see the moon, do you know what you need to know to get in the ballpark of reality? And I would suggest, if you're still listening to anything NASA told you, you are not. And furthermore, an average camera system on a good scope that was looking at something 340,000 miles away, a single pixel of that image would be miles across. So what does that tell you about I can see a building, or there's a craft, or any of these things?
Can I ask you guys this? This isn't really off topic. I think it's quite related. When we talk about some of the most powerful telescopes and observatories in the world, we have to talk about the Vatican. Is it true that they own a telescope, that they it's a moniker, it's initials that add up to Lucifer? Is that true?
Yep.
And what is the Vatican's interest in these observatories? What are they seeing? What do they know that they're not telling the rest of us?
You know, this is an interesting story too, because like I got my first scope in my big robotic 8-inch that put me hugely in debt. I'd never been in debt like that for anything but a car in my life. I'd just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and it was at that time, all of a sudden, all the big entities started saying, we're not using optical scopes anymore. Now we want radio scopes. And I used to always think, why? Well, here's why. Because there's a thing up there that the Bible calls the firmament, that I call the hard, fast barrier, and we've never been on the other side of it, not with our bodies anyhow, or not with a machine. What they're doing is they're examining that barrier or trying to detect what's beyond it. That's where I'm coming from.
You know, we didn't even mention that when Secure Team 10, or I think that's the correct name, had you on, you were trying to get them to do more, and you said he took too much heat for it. I don't remember exactly how that went down, but...
Oh, I've never been on his show, or I've never had him on.
He ran my
Crow.
stuff once.
Oh, you guys. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, didn't he tell you, Crow, that there was too much heat that he took from having anything to do with you, and he didn't want anything more to do with you?
Maybe not in so many words, Jason, but I had given him another clip of one of the interesting objects I had shot transiting the moon, which he never ran. But, you know, I think we don't need to question it anymore. That's a thriving channel. Its sub count is astronomical, which tells you that that's approved by the system, that we understand wholly what that system is. YouTube is a control system. It's about dimming the minds of this world. It's about controlling information flow, and it's about stifling new discoveries. So next week, when Jason march our little rear ends out to show a provable discovery that I made about the sun in 2016, you can count on the fact that YouTube will do everything they can to block it, which is why I run crow777radio.com. And, you know, before we came on the air, why I urged you to start shifting everything that's important to you over to a private website, because this ain't going away.
Yeah, and for those listening, my private website is sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda, as so many of you know. And I really do appreciate all of you who stop over there on a daily basis to get the real news from the sources we trust as we share that with the world. And very much appreciate everybody's support. You can always find my latest videos, my original videos, sticky posted at the top of sgtreport.com. So that way you're not going to miss a thing, even if YouTube tries to prevent you from seeing the stuff by not giving you alerts. Guys, please also resubscribe. They keep unsubscribing, folks. Just hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. All right. So with that said, let me ask you this. I did explore this with David Weiss and my friend Marty Leeds. I am not a flat earther, but I am a globe, as we're told, skeptic. I'm willing to say that much, because what really woke me up and at least prompted me to explore a little bit further was this very important idea that water always finds its level.
It
And
does.
the only reason that that doesn't happen in the globe model is because of gravity. So that doesn't really add up. And then I was looking at the Suez Canal and trying to do the math on that, and it didn't seem to add up. And then I'm told they didn't engineer for a curve. They didn't engineer for the spherical model in this, 130-mile long canal that they literally dug, folks. They dug it out of the ground. Ships go through it to this day as level as a level. I just don't know what else to tell you. So are those two of the biggest maybe smoking guns that might help wake people up to question this thing we live on?
You know what? It's almost like anything is the smoking gun. It's just that we've been lied to since we were in school so many times that we've all accepted that we've been told a true thing. And one of the biggest proofs to me, and by the way, I'm not a flat earther either, because I think it's very short-sighted, most of what comes out of the community. And I don't want to inherit that belief system. I want to put out my own research. But one of the things that struck me is there was a guy named Robotham way back in the day who said, guess what? We're not living on a spinning ball, and I can prove it. And the way he proved it was he used the government published stats on how far you can see a lighthouse. And that is brilliant. I've spent a lot of time on boats and at sea in my life. And one thing you cannot lie about is the distance you can see a lighthouse, because in heavy weather, if a ship needs to know, dear Lord, where is that coastline? You can't be fudging those numbers, right? That's life and death, not fear porn. That's a true thing. And what he showed was 25 lighthouses could be seen from too far. To this day, a number of those lighthouses still exist. The published accounts of the other ones that no longer exist are still there, but the government kicks out this dude to go debunk Robotham. And he comes in wholeheartedly believing this guy's crazy and his math must be wrong. The first statement he makes is Robotham's math is indisputably correct. And so he keeps at it. Pretty soon he realizes he can't find fault in anything Robotham did. And what makes it worse, he's using government published distances, which have to be factual because they in fact show shipping lanes. You know what? If you're here, you should be able to see a lighthouse and you know you're near safety. What he ends up stating at the end of the day after trying to debunk Robotham was that Robotham clearly cherry-picked these 25 lighthouses. And I thought, oh man, look at that. Because if Robotham could show one lighthouse, game over. But Robotham showed 25 lighthouses. And so these things are not arguable. When I was first, and what most people don't realize is I filmed the 2012 lunar wave in the fall of 2012, and I didn't post it anywhere for a year. In October of 2013, I finally broke down and set up a YouTube channel. Within 30 days of that event, the flat earth movement kicked off, because so many people thought, wait a minute, maybe I truly don't know what's going on above my head. Maybe I really don't understand what the moon is. And they began to question it all. So there's all that, man.
Okay, and just to be clear, Crow, what you're saying is, I think as you reference these lighthouses, we're talking about the spherical global model, as we're told, 24,900 mile, what is it? There should be a discernible inability to see beyond a certain distance because of the fall off of the globe model. So these lighthouses should not be able to be seen from the distances that the government is saying that they can be seen from. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm actually saying more than that. I'm emphatically saying that if the globe model was correct, it would be impossible to see lighthouses beyond a certain distance. And what I forgot to mention was shortly after I posted the lunar wave and this whole flat earth thing comes online, and all of a sudden you're faced with this problem. I've been told this one thing my whole life, and here's this radical new thing that I've seen made fun of my whole life. But wait a minute, is there something to it? Am I going to grow up and be an adult and consider this logically with an open mind, try to go rip holes in it, try to disprove it? Or am I just going to sit here and say, nope, I'm going to believe what my textbook told me? So what I did is I headed out to a body of water and I took high-end optics and found immediately I could see too far. And that was it. Game over. That proves beyond the shadow of questioning that the curvature model is wrong. And I'll leave it kind of there because people need to get there on their own, tricycle, right?
Yeah.
you gotta be ready to do it. You've got to have the wherewithal to do it. And you don't need people saying unhelpful things to impede your performance. But I'm here to tell you that anyone who gets into their adult mind, looks at it with an open mind, and goes out will find emphatically the globe model is nonsense, and it's provable nonsense. And even if you didn't want to do it yourself, you could go look at Robotham's lighthouse work, because that's all published official distances. And though some of the lighthouses are gone, some still exist.
Yeah, and there's another YouTube channel. I don't have the name of it in front of me. I mentioned it in the interview with Marty Leeds and David Weiss. And that's this channel that's doing this infrared photography. And it's revealing even further distances than we thought.
Right.
And it just, you're right. So when I say I'm a globe as we're told skeptic, guys, what I'm saying is that maybe the Earth is far, far larger than we're told.
There you go.
Maybe it's still round. I don't know.
Well, let's use that logic for a second. So suppose that, in fact, the very place we live has been lied about, right? What would be the immediate assumption we could make that is likely has merit? It would be this. If they've lied about where we live, why wouldn't they be hiding land masses? Land's got to be the most valuable thing. You can't make more of it for the most part. Right. I guess if you're a rich Arab, you can make a palm tree island, but for the most part, you can't add a lot more land to what's here. So it's quite likely that there are land masses we know nothing of. These are logical things we can arrive at, but you see, most people can't get there without a vast amount of research. And unfortunately, most of us got to go to work, got to raise the kids, got to pay the taxes, got to go get my license renewed. We're busy. So most people rely on those who do have the time to show a path forward. But I would point out further, as we all sat in school, high school, and we looked on the wall, what was there? A Mercator projection map of the world. Now we were told, well, the world's really a globe, so we had to flatten it to make this map. This is the closest approximation we can make. Well, let me tell you something. If you take a Mercator projection, a Gall Peters, a Peters, just look online. There's endless projections. And just choose a continent and lay them all next to each other, and you will see that no two match each other, which tells you one thing certainly. They're all wrong. You can't trust any of them. They're all different. But here's the rub. The moment we went outside the firmament and looked back at this world from space, that problem should have disappeared. From that moment forward, rendering a continent in the way we would see it from a distance should have disappeared, and it hasn't. But then again, I'm here to tell you, no one's ever seen anything from space. No image of anything, not the moon, not this planet or so-called planet, not Pluto, not some asteroid. It's all an artist's rendering. As a matter of fact, one of the last supposed images of Earth from space was released as a wallpaper on, I think it was the 2007 iPhone. We know the name of the artist who did it. His last name is Simmons, and he's on the record as having stated, NASA gave me all this data, so I made this image to look like I thought the world should look from space. It's all a construct, man, all of it.
Hey, let's also talk about the fact that major corporations are just burning through resources like they don't have to worry about things running out. But if you believe all the mainstream hype, well, these are scarce resources, which is, and honestly, just nonsense.
Well, what I think is fascinating about this part of the conversation, guys, is that, first of all, Alex Jones has been the one that was under attack first. They deplatformed him, but the reason I bring up his name is because of one of his websites called prisonplanet.com. If you think about the way that we've been indoctrinated since birth, and if you think about how short our lives are, and if you think about the fact that we're indoctrinated in these public learning institutions where we're told to regurgitate the facts that they teach us, they tell us of these facts, it's very easy to see how we really literally could be on a prison planet. And I'll make the point a bit further. I'll flesh it out a bit further by saying, look at who we're told is the world's richest man. Jeff Bezos, with one generational wealth, a company he built just 20 years ago. He's the richest man on earth when these banksters, these international banking families have owned the printing presses and all of the banks and central banks on the planet for hundreds of years. I mean, that alone tells us how much we've been lied to.
Well, you'll come to find out if you follow even the work Jason and I have done for so long now. that money is not the real wealth in this world. Money is a control mechanism. We all pass around fiat currency, right? Has no value. There was a time when supposedly you could take your bill and exchange it for what was called specie, or basically gold or silver. There's another thing we can thank Nixon for. He took us off the gold standard, right? So from that point forward, we were handing around IOUs that will never get paid off. So if I come to your house and I buy something from you for $5 and I hand you a $5 bill, I've handed you an IOU that says I owe you $5. But the sad truth is you're never getting your $5. You're going to turn around and hand that $5 IOU to someone else and tell them I owe you $5. That's the system we live in. When you get above the nonsensical governments, when you get above the nonsensical entities that are put out for us all to argue about, you find true power, and it has absolutely nothing to do with fiat currency.
Yeah, it's spiritual warfare, and I think this is how we come full circle here, guys. We come full circle by talking about what Wernher von Braun put on his tombstone, Psalm 19:1. And I'm going to read Psalm 19 in full, because my question for you is, why would they be doing this? Why have they lied to us about just about everything? Why has NASA misled us about just about everything? Is it because Ronald Bernard is right, that Dutch banker who said at the very top, they're all Satanists, they're all Luciferians? Because Wernher von Braun, I believe, was telling us something very important. He was giving us a very important tip, a hint, with Psalm 19:1 on his tombstone. Psalm 19 goes like this: to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. One of the most powerful passages in the Bible, and Wernher von Braun put it on his tombstone. Why?
Well, for one thing, that also encodes the 9/11 date, which Jason and I have spent endless episodes showing how often they encode the 9/11 idea, which in my view is when the bid for world takeover came out in the open. Maybe they feel they're so far in control that no one can stop them. Who knows? But my main point here is you asked a simple question. Why do they lie about everything? Well, let's logically break that down. If everything I believe is fantasy, right? That kind of makes me a child. You know, when you talk to children, they have all these ideas that adults know, well, that's just childish fantasy. But when all the adults are living in childish fantasy, that means every decision that they make in this world is based on erroneous information. That's an easy population to control. But there's a spiritual side too. Each of us is here to grow up spiritually and otherwise. And if we spend our lives being mired in the belief of ridiculous fantasies, like I'm sitting on this round thing that's spinning faster than the speed of sound, which is in orbit faster than the speed of a speeding bullet, which is in orbit around a sun, which is going many times the speed of a speeding bullet, which is in orbit in a galaxy, which is going many, many, many times a 30-06 round. You see where this goes. And yet that is where the majority of us are. But to top it all off, if you don't understand where you exist at this moment, how can you possibly understand where you can go from here?
Amen. I got to tell you, I think this is one of the most intriguing, enjoyable conversations I've had in a long time. I want to thank you guys both for coming on. And I hope that what you'll do for me is email me once you've made that announcement about the sun and this discovery you've made, and maybe we can get you back on again right away.
Why don't you do this? How about if you email me an email and a username you'd like to have. I'll give you a 1-year free account to Crow 777 Radio, which is the full show, and you will be notified about everything that happens.
Deal. That sounds fantastic. I appreciate that. Well, tell people how they can subscribe and support you. I got to tell you guys, you may not know this. I have one of the most supportive audiences on all of YouTube and maybe in the world, because every time I have on an author, they give me feedback saying, I've never sold more books. I sold out of all my books. You put me on the top 10 list on Amazon. So how can we get people to support you guys?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for having us. You've opened up a brand new audience here, and we are in the age of awakening. Sometime around the turn of the millennium, for whatever reason, minds started coming online, and the old stories were no longer good enough, and regurgitating information was no longer considered learning. You can find the main hub on YouTube which is Crow 777, CRROW 777. But that is only, well, it houses all the telescope work early on, and it houses the free first hour of every podcast we do. The main show in town is crow777radio.com. Jason and I are up to next episode when we drop the bomb about the sun. That will be episode 150. We're working to figure out a way to start being able to stream our own video so I can get back to telescope work. Jason just acquired a P1000 camera system. He will be filming the sky. And I'll tell you what, if you are an inquiring mind, ready to grow up and ready to throw away all the childish things we've been told, here's a way forward. Maybe it's not the best way for you. Maybe it is. You'll have to check it out and make that decision for yourself.
Fantastic. And Jason, it was a real pleasure to have you come on. It was nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you as well, man. Look forward to coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Crow, an absolute delight. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks again. And if you'd ever like to do it again, and if you're interested after we drop the bomb next week, just give me a holler.
Yeah, I will do that. Guys, I advise you to check out crow777radio.com. Our guests have been the one, the only Crow, and Jason Lindgren as co-host. Guys, thanks so much.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. And guys, thank you so much for your support. A special shout out and thank you to my patrons. You truly are helping keep me in the game as YouTube changes the rules in the middle of the game to try to extinguish truth from their platform. So God bless. And for real news 24/7, guys, visit us at sgtreport.com. Bye-bye.
This latest one is just the latest in a series of steps that tech companies have been taking at the direction of groups like Media Matters and the Atlantic Council to say, here's how we're going to control who's on there.